Welcome to the Burgundy Gold Knuckleheads podcast. As always, you know who's with me, and this is a special day today. My main man, Reggie. What's going on, Reg?
Hey Ken, what's going on, man? So big day in Commanders news today, man. And here we are going to be able to bring all of our listeners a podcast, but along with a special guest that can come on right away and just right hot off the press, be able to give us some insight and some opinions about the big news of the day. And as most Commander fans know, that is the trading of one Jahan Dotson. Han Solo, as some people like to refer to him. So just a couple of minutes, we're going to bring on our friend, Mr. Lake Lewis, inside Commanders Insider, and talk to us and give us some thoughts about the trade for Jahan Dotson. And there he is.
Thanks, Lake. Thanks for joining, my man.
No problem. No problem. Glad you guys have me back on.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Glad you was able to make it. So, just due for the sake of time, we want to kind of get some opinions and thoughts on the news of the day. So, just kind of give us some insight, Lake. Tell us what you know, what has kind of led into this. I know there's been a little buzz over the past few weeks, questioning the playing time of Jahan in preseason game. The coaching staff hadn't quite committed to him as the number 2 guy. De'Ami Brown getting a lot of snaps, a lot of cloudiness, I guess, if you will, in the air. And then all of a sudden, we get the alert Jahan Dotson is traded to the Philadelphia Eagles. What can you tell us?
Yeah, I mean, it was a surprise, to some of us. I'm John and me we're cool with each other, we're Penn Staters, and just it was a surprise. But then and again, guys, it wasn't. And I say this because Jahan had been struggling. His body language, his confidence. He had mentioned to us, a couple times that he's still working on his confidence. And normally you don't hear that from, professional athletes who aspire to be really good. And this guy coming off that rookie year 2 years ago, you thought, okay, they have a 1 and 1A and 1B in him and Terry. And then last year, we know it just didn't work out for him, as well as a lot of players on that offense. And that was, due to Eric Bieniemy, Ron Rivera. They just didn't have anything of a semblance of an offense that you wanted. So you thought, maybe he was going to get a pass with that year. And then this year, you'd have to win over a new coaching staff. But most people didn't think that was going to be hard to do because he's a talented person, talented player. But you could see in some of the practices, some drops. You could see some bobble passes, even on the punt return yesterday. He was bobbling some of them, and in the ones he caught, he wasn't running them out. And then you would see a guy like Olamide Zacchaeus just getting, punt returns and just full on speeding out, as soon as he caught the ball. And it just made you wonder, like, is there something going on with him? Like, he's just not himself. And I talked with someone today about it. At the same time, I don't want to use the word standoffish or anything like that, but he just wasn't the same guy you saw 2 years ago. The confidence was shot, and he just seems like he never recovered from that. And clearly, the coaching staff saw that as well and decided to move on from him, because there are some guys, like the De'Ami Browns, like the, Zacchaeus. There, some younger guys, Bryson Tremaine. They're guys that have been really pushing their name to the forefront, but because they weren't first round draft picks, you were just wondering, were they going to get an opportunity? Well, now they're going to get an opportunity. So, it seems like there's just a move that they made. And one thing that it does seem like is happening quite a bit, it's a purge of Ron Rivera and what they did, previously, the previous regime. They're purging themselves from a lot of these guys. And, it just makes you wonder, what was that old regime looking at?
Yeah, and we were talking about it earlier. Is when you're a 4-13 team, we can blame the coaching staff at some point, but the talent of the players comes into effect, and Ron and the coaching staff selecting these players. And as I know, Jahan was playing a lot more in the first 2 preseason games, and as I look at it now, were they trying to give him more chances, or were they auditioning him for other teams to see?
I think it was a little bit of both. I mean, I
Yeah.
do know that in Philadelphia, they're expecting for him to be the slot guy. I guess Paris Campbell and some of the other guys weren't working out. So they're expecting for him to be their third receiver, got kind of work underneath A.J. Brown on the outside, Devonta Smith on the outside. But he didn't really grasp that here. And you saw in some of these preseason games him playing a little bit longer than most starters do.
Yep.
But that was, getting him looks to see what he could do. And I think they probably just decided, it's best for both parties to have a change of scenery. We're going to find out tomorrow when we're at practice. We talk with Dan Quinn tomorrow. It's going to be interesting to hear what he has to say, because the one thing that about this new regime, this new setup, is that they like quality people. And Jahan is that. He's a really good person, good kid. And, but to see them move on from that clearly is from the football side. And if I must say this, someone asked me, like, just what do you really think happened? I just think that from a personality standpoint, Jahan is so soft-spoken and so quiet. I'm not saying he doesn't have a dog in him. Obviously, if you're a first-round draft pick, you're a good football player.
Right.
But
Sure.
Dan Quinn and these guys, they're looking for some aggression. They're looking for guys that are, letting you know about it too. So it's going to be a little bit more nasty type setup.
Yeah.
Good guys, but guys on the field that don't want to be your best friend. And, I'm wondering if that kind of led into it as well.
Well, when you talk about we're gonna call it aggression, or let's go with having dog in him, right? Let's go with that. So when you got a guy that may be lacking a little bit of that intensity, but he's producing, you could probably get away with it, right? But with the fact that he was, the reports were that he wasn't having a good camp. You mentioned he's being a little standoffish from some of his teammates, so he's not getting that bond. And their whole thing is about bonding as a team, bonding as a unit, bonding as a family. He's not doing that. And then also he's lacking a little intensity, which they know they want that to be a staple of their team identity. It just all culminated into maybe he's just not going to be one of our guys. But it's just a little bit disappointing because, Jahan was the first true Washington Commander, right? When they went through the new brand, he was their first pick that year.
Yeah.
And many fans even thought, we didn't know who he was. They didn't know much about him. But then he comes in as a rookie and does well. So this whole thing was a little bit of a shocker, man. You couldn't have convinced me 2 days ago that Jahan Dotson would not have been on this team. And so it's a little bit shocking to me, to be quite honest.
Yeah, I actually was on a couple shows over the past 2 days, and I adamantly was like, they're not moving on from him. In fairness to that, those people were saying that, we in the media were reporting that they're going to release him. And I said, there's no truth to that at all. No way were they going to release a first round draft pick without getting any compensation. That would have been stupid. So I was like, let's end that conversation right now. But when you see them bringing in guys continuously, at the wide receiver position and at the corner position, it makes you wonder, are they really happy with the group as a whole? And I think that there are 4 or 5 receivers that they are happy with, but now you're getting rid of a guy that was expected to be a big play guy, not a possession receiver, but a big play receiver. You go back, a couple years ago, and I think he had 6, 7 touchdowns, and had had the play against the Giants that everyone still talks about, the spin move. You hadn't seen too many receivers in Washington do those type of things. So just 2 years later, less than 2 years later, actually, to see them moving on from him, it is a new regime, new group. I just have to tell people, you just have to put your faith and confidence in Dan Quinn and Adam Peters, and hopefully, they know what they're doing. I think they know what they're doing. But this one was a bit of a shocker because this wasn't a disgruntled person or player that, would talk about negative things, or at least not publicly. And, I think once again, to see someone like that, who's a first rounder, it just kind of brings back those those moments to fans where like once again one of these top high price picks just didn't work out and there's nothing to show for it.
I mean, he's not even in the end of his contract. He's played 2 years.
He's on his rookie deal.
He's doing his rookie deal, but he's even at the end of it. He's literally halfway through his rookie deal, and he's already being moved. It's got to be the shocker so far, man. I we were wondering if there would be some surprise cuts, if you will.
Sure.
But this wasn't a cut per se; it was a trade. But man, like I said, you couldn't have convinced me that Jahan Dotson would not have been on this team entering this season. So wow.
Well, I don't think they're done either.
I was going to say, as they're reading through the tea leaves, I mean, I think as we were, go through at the end of free agency, and then at the end of the draft, and you look at the team and you see where they addressed a lot, right? And we can sit there and say, oh, well, we need a little bit more here. We could have done a little bit more there. But a receiver, we looked at Terry 1, Jahan 2, and we were questioning who's going to end up being number 3, right? Now it's who's number 2 and who's number 3. And with that being said, circling around, is there any possibility of a blockbuster trade with San Francisco?
No.
0.
I don't see it. And I've been saying that. I mean, who's to say tomorrow when we get to practice, they're announcing they traded for. I just don't see it not because he wouldn't help them, because he would, of course.
Right.
But what are you going to have to give up to get him? And again, this isn't a Super Bowl team. This is a team that has aspirations to perhaps sneak into the playoffs this year as a wild card. That would be a great story if that were to happen. But when you make these kind of blockbuster trades, it's for teams that are trying to win right now. There's a reason why San Francisco has not moved on, from Ayuk, because they're trying to get back to the Super Bowl to win it. For Pittsburgh, supposedly put a nice offer on the table, but it wasn't good enough for San Francisco to say, hey, we'll take it and lose, our number 1 receiver, basically. I still think he is their number 1 receiver over Debo. But I think their system with Kyle is good enough that they can plug in someone. I think Ricky Pearsall gets in there, and I think he's going to do some work, the kid from Florida. So the thing is that I just, again, this whole thing it's a jolt. It's a surprise, but I don't think Washington's done. I really don't, because if you're telling me right now that your 6 receivers on the roster right now, I'm going to tell you don't have a big body as far as those 6, because let's just do the math. Terry's 1, De'Ami Brown is 2 right now. OZ is Olamide, he's 3 right now. Luke McCaffrey 4, and now you look at a guy like Jamison Crowder, who's still there doing well. He could be 5. He could be your punt returner as well. And then the 6th guy, is it going to be Pringle? Is it going to be Bryson Tremaine? Is it going to be Mitch Tinsley? Is it going to be
Martavius Bryant?
Martavius Bryant. So now you have to ask yourself, is that 6th guy, do they make a difference? That's the question you have to ask. And then the other guys that I named before them, we know Terry's Terry, but the other guys have question marks as well. And the other guys lack size, so, you still don't have that guy that's just going to eat 50-50 balls up. That's Terry, believe it or not. But we're talking about a bigger body. And I can't see Martavis Bryant making this squad, having played in 6 seasons. I just, wow, that would be a shocker. And they did bring him in, though, but I don't
So
know.
let me ask you this then. You say that you don't think that they're done, but they won't go after Brandon Ayuk. So are you saying you think they'll just get someone who's cut from another team, or do you think there's a potential for them to do a trade? But in this case, it won't necessarily be draft personnel as much as it may be draft picks. What do you think is happening here? Potentially.
Yeah, well, I think that for the draft pick side is already done with Jahan, but I think now they're gonna if they were to make a trade or if they were to try to make a move, it's to bring someone in who's going to contribute and be a major contributor with them in their offense. So you have to kind of scour around and look around and see who's available. And there's really not much. The other big name who's holding out is CeeDee Lamb.
Right.
I cannot see Jerry Jones under any circumstances allowing CeeDee Lamb to be in a Commander's uniform. So
I agree.
let's just chop that off at the knees right now. Okay.
I agree with you.
Yeah. So, you have to think, like when you look at what Buffalo did with Stephon Diggs and moved on from him, that was in the offseason. Now we're here. These guys are practicing. They have bodies of work. They are learning the system. So if you're going to do something, you clearly want to do it over the next 2-3 weeks before you have your first game against Tampa. But I kind of lead to believe that they're going to see if there are any cuts, surprising cuts, not just because a player's no good or they're not playing well, but because they're a big cap hit for a team, and a team may decide we just need to move on and go young, even though this player is our best receiver or whatever. That's what you have to do. But I also think there's a fine balance, guys, where you don't want to disrupt chemistry and you don't want to disrupt the goodwill in the locker room. And that's why I don't think they made the move for Brandon Ayuk, because that's Jaden's guy. That's one of his closest friends. Right. And you bring him in here and he's getting the ball a little bit more than Terry, then you start to wonder. And then you also have to think you're going to have to pay Ayuk big money, like top 5 receiver money. And you have a guy already who you're paying that kind of money to. And then you're going to have to pay a quarterback eventually too, some big money as well. You can't have all your money in 3 players on one side of the ball on top of that. We've seen how that worked out with the defense, right? So,
well, I think in that scenario, by the time you paid Jaden Daniels, it would almost be looking at, is it time for Terry to move on? Because you get, at Terry's age now, and you're moving 4 or 5 years down the road. Yeah. So from a cap hit perspective, it would almost make sense. I know he's a rookie, so you don't go all in on a rookie quarterback who hasn't even thrown a ball yet. But at some point, like a lot of teams do, once you see that you've got a quarterback that you can really go off of, that's when you go all in before you pay your quarterback crazy money.
Yeah, I mean, we saw this recently with the Packers, the Texans. I mean, the Texans are going to do the same thing by the end of the year. I mean, they're going to pony that money up because it's easier to get them. It's easier to know that you, like you said, you've got your franchise guy. He's proved that for 1 year or 2 years, and you can pay him a boatload of money. But it's not him giving you 4 All-Star seasons or 4 Pro Bowl seasons. Then when you're going to have to really pay to kill your cap. So teams are smart. They're paying their young quarterbacks off their rookie deals. They'll go ahead and tear that deal up and do something else. But if you're Washington, you are building something, and they are a team that should be markedly improved. They won 4 games last year. I think they double that this year by far. But when you're starting to talk 12 wins, 13 wins, those are Super Bowl caliber football teams. It's not this team yet. Right. So you don't want to just start going haywire here. But then again, there's a GM in the building for the first time ever, since I've covered him. A real GM and a coach with who he and the GM have a plan in play. And they're just trying to get their guys. They're for the culture that they're building. And it is a very good culture. I can say, being out at these practices every day, it's different. It's just flat out different. There's an energy out there, professionalism there, and it's just modern football. I mean, they're playing music the whole practice, loud. They never did stuff like that, and then you wonder why there's no energy on Sundays. So they're doing all these things now, the analytics, the training staff, so many trainers out there now. I mean, it's just a good feel, guys.
Well, let me ask you this then. So this kind of coincides to the point you just made about the front office here. So back when they made the announcement about Adam Peters, fan base ecstatic, right? Mm-hmm. We know there was a little lukewarm about the hiring of Dan Quinn at first, and then everyone just fell in love, and here we go, off and running, right? It's been all love, and then all of a sudden, We trade Jahan Dotson. Now there's some rumblings about. Well, I take it back. We didn't go and pick up, and we didn't bring Brandon Ayuk, right? They're blaming him for the kicker, which, in my opinion, they had no idea about what was going on with the kicker. But now we have a question mark at kicker up until they trade it. Mm-hmm. Now the Jahan Dotson trade, right? A guy who's a first round pick. We're going into, at this point, our wide receiver depth is a little in question right now. And now people are starting to question. What do you say to those people that was all in, believe in the process, trust in Peters, right? We trust Adam, we trust Dan, and believe in the process. And then all of a sudden today we're questioning. Now we got our Twitter GMs questioning their front office. What do you say to those people?
Man, it's a great point. And I got a lot of DMs today. I mean, a lot from people like, what are they doing? You know, make it make sense. And I'm like, it was tough for me at first to absorb it. I was a little upset. Like, what, really? But I know what my eyes have seen, and I can say Jahan was struggling. He really was. Normally, you let a first rounder struggle and you work through it, you know.
Yeah.
But you guys know how this business works. That wasn't their guy under any circumstances, and the guys who weren't their guys, like a Terry, has made it quite known how good he is, you know, so you can't run from that. That guy's a Pro Bowler. So I think there's also another layer to this that I think fans, and this is what I would like to say to the fans, is Dan Quinn and Adam Peters have been preaching from day one culture. They've been preaching doing things together. You know, no one person stands out. Everyone is together. That's how they want this team to be. Very tightly, knitted team, so to speak. But they also have made it a point to say competition. That's the word that goes around all the time with them. Competition, competition, competition. So when you have a guy like Owens, you know, and you're as a safety, no one knew about having this great camp. You have Bryson Tremaine, wide receiver from Stanford. He's like 6'4", 6'5", having a really good camp. You can't justify preaching that you're going to give everybody opportunities if they've earned it. And then when you see two young guys excelling and kind of outplaying some veterans, and you think about putting them on the practice squad, that's not going to sit well. That kind of goes on deaf ears now. So now they're practicing what they preach. Like, if you outperform someone, I don't care what your draft status was, and hence Jahan is now the poster child for that comment, and it holds to be true because he was first rounder, and he got moved out pretty much because De'Ami Brown is having a hell of a camp, and so is OZ. You know, so when you look at Olamide and you look at De'Ami, they're having such really good camps. They almost looked at it like, you know, we're getting 2 for 1 right here now. So this is where we're going to go, at least at this moment. And I do think that had something to do with it as well.
Speaking of number one picks struggling, Forbes.
Emmanuel Forbes.
Forbes.
Yeah. I mean, I've heard nothing but we clearly saw him struggling last year. I've heard nothing but struggling in camp this year. Is there a chance that he's not there opening day? I know that's extreme.
Hang on, late before you answer that. Let me just wrap up the Jahan Dotson talk.
Okay.
We as a fan base were excited when the Saints traded with us for Olave, and we got Robinson, there's Cole Turner, Jahan Dotson, and Brian Robinson. I think there was a couple players, right? And at this point, the only person left that's doing anything out of that trade, I think, is Brian Robinson.
That's it.
And the Saints seem to be doing okay with Chris Olave down in their building right now. And so this is just kind of one more indictment on the Ron Rivera staff and where we are with what they've done over the few years. And I don't want to go back and hash that, but I just wanted to kind of wrap that up with fans
it's an important key right now, and you're dead on. It is a very important part of what's going on, and that's why I'm calling it the Purge. It's like a new movie, the Purge. The Purge DC.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
it's a bad situation to think that you're moving on from players that are young too. By the way, they're not old.
yeah.
Right.
These are guys that just I think for the first time, and you guys know I love the fan base. I always talk to everyone, but in my stand up today, this is actually what I'm talking about. I'm talking to the fans about how if you want a better product on the field and you want the players to perform better and not accept losing, then you can't be loser fans either. You can't accept that either.
That's it.
And I said it for us in the media. You got to be a better media person. You can't always spew this negativity over and over and over because it gets old. And it is definitely, the cloud has been lifted out there. It's not the same. It is much different. But these guys they are talent evaluators. I think they've proven that with some of the unheralded, not even drafted guys that are getting ready to make this football team. That
Right.
tells you all you need to know, because their draft picks, oh, by the way, are doing really good. So I think what it shows you is that if these guys were to evaluate the picks that the Rivera regime made, they probably wouldn't have picked any of these guys. Let's call it like it is.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, with Forbes, getting back to him, I mean, there were things today that we saw, man, that just looked bad. It's like
Is
drills,
he
ball
making the
hitting him in
team
the
like?
face mask twice. I mean, him slipping on a punt return where they're jogging. I mean, he just was running and fell. I mean, I'm with B Mitch when that happens, and we're like, what's going on? So it's just, I'm not calling the kid out because he's had some good moments in camp. He hasn't had a horrible camp by any means. If you told me what's his grade in this camp, I would probably say a C plus. So it's not bad, but he's a first round draft pick. You're not supposed to have C plus camps. And when you hear a guy like AJ Brown say the other day from their joint practice against the Patriots that Christian Gonzalez is one of the toughest dudes he's gone up against, he wasn't saying that about Emmanuel Forbes. He probably was saying one of the
Yeah,
easiest guys he's gone up against. Those are the disparities. When you hear that, it drives you nuts. So I say to fans, if you remember feeling those ways many times over the past 4 years, you accept what happened today and think that these guys have a plan in place.
wow. Okay. Listen, man. You're not talking to me per se because I'm not a loser fan. Because I've been a fan a long time, but I will tell you, as a fan, we get invested in these players and their stories and their past and the fact that they play for our team. And so when they move on from some of our favorites, it's tough to handle. I
So
remember the guys like Tim Settle, and I remember God, I just drew a blank on one of the other guys. We wish these guys well. We hate that they're no longer playing for us. But Ken and I have talked about it many times. If you go back and create the list of all these guys, once they left Washington, you
it's quite
almost
a
never
list.
heard from them again.
Yeah, quite a
Right? It's
list.
quite the list.
Lorenzo Alexander, that's my
Right?
guy.
Now Lowe went on and did some good things in Buffalo, but there's a list of these guys where we did not want to get rid of them, but then they go to other teams and you never hear from them again. And so it's just a part of the business. It's the human side. I wish Jahan nothing but the best, man, because even as a commander, the past few years, he's been the kind of player you want in the building. And but at the end of the day, just like with Ron Rivera that we talked on the last time you were on our podcast, it's business. It's not personal, it's business. And it's a results-oriented business. And at the end of the day, man, they need the production. And they apparently wasn't getting it out of Jahan for whatever those reasons are or whatever they were. And it was time for them to part ways. And so I wish nothing but the best for him, man. And I don't know if you have a personal relationship with him being an alumni, but let him know from what I've seen and from talking to other people, man, the fans have nothing but love for him and wishing him the best, man.
What's crazy, guys?
Except when he plays Washington. Except when he plays Washington.
I'm going to tell you what's really crazy is that I literally was on a show last night, and they were talking to me about Jahan, and I literally said, I mean, it's online right now. You know, I literally said, I'm going to make it a point today to pull him aside at practice and tell him, bro, you got to start having fun again, because you're not having fun. Before en route to practice, they make the trade. It was just like, wow. but when you look back at it, you could see it. I mean, everyone was noticing his body language was not. When I tell you his body language was bad, he was mentally fatigued. You could see it, and he was pressing really bad. He just didn't have that same smoothness that he had. You know, I remember at Penn State, he was a one-man gang. They didn't even have a quarterback back then. No offense, because I know Sean Clifford's in the NFL. I think he's with the Packers, but he was struggling at that point. But Jahan still was doing everything. He was returning punts and everything too. He's doing everything. And then he comes in as a rookie and has this dynamic rookie season where some of us, and I'm one of them, was saying they may not have a clear number one in Washington. It might be 1A and 1B with him and Terry. I really felt like they had a dynamic duo in the making. And just to see it fall apart that fast is it's part of the business, I guess. But they made the decision to move on from him, and I don't think Adam Peters and Dan Quinn, from what we've learned of them and what we know of them, talking with these guys, is that I don't think they're just going to do anything, a knee-jerk reaction on a whim. They have a plan in play. I do believe deep down that they're not done at the wide receiver position. I just, for the life of me, I don't think that they're done. I could see them trying to make a move on something, but I don't think it's going to be one of those home runs like CeeDee Lamb or Brandon Ayuk. I don't see that. But maybe tomorrow when I'm driving to practice, that happens.
Well, I will say this, you know, being that you mentioned confidence and whatever else may be going on with Jahan, it's a little bit shocking because, like you said, a lot of those guys had a down year last year. It wasn't just Jahan. But if there was a guy to lose confidence and to hang his head based on what is being said about it, it would be Emmanuel Forbes, not Jahan. Jahan was loved by this fan base, and people gave him a pass last year because it had everything to do with the coaching staff that was and was not, the offensive coordinator that was and was not, the offensive line. There was all the other things that we could point to and say it necessarily wasn't Jahan.
I gave everybody a pass for last year. Everyone. Not just Jahan. I thought anyone that was part of that, you got to pass, because it was the most dysfunctional, poorly ran thing I've ever covered. And it was a train wreck, literally. It wasn't even a train wreck. There was no wreck. The train went off the the thing into the ocean. You didn't even see it. It was gone. So you come into this year and everyone has a chance to prove themselves, you know. But when you see a guy like Terry do it, and you know, like, if they didn't know how good Terry was, they probably think he's even better now than advertised.
Yeah.
That's what Jahan was supposed to do. And it didn't work. And guess what? Like I said, De'Ami Brown's having a hell of a camp. Now, De'Ami's had really good, off seasons in the past, and it didn't work out in the regular season. But you can see his game is at another level now. He's not dropping passes. He's running crisp routes. He's just making plays. And like I said, OZ's making plays. Jamison Crowder's doing some things. So it's almost like when you see with your own eyes guys outplaying your first round draft pick, I wouldn't have cut him. I mean, not cut him. I wouldn't have traded him. But that's a whole nother story.
Yeah. Well, man, I think we've had you on for a while, man. But we definitely like to thank you for coming on and stopping through for a little bit, man, just to give us some quick insight on today's news and everything, man. It's a shocker, but as you said, we can't have a losing mentality as fan base. So we have to trust in the front office and say, hey, man, they have a plan. And so with that, man, we'll sign off here and stay on for just a few minutes here. But we want to thank you for everybody that's listening in. Please like and subscribe this, man. Follow Lake on Twitter at Lake Lewis Jr. And Lake, you want to shout out any of the other platforms that you're on?
Oh yeah, you can go to my Instagram. There's a lot of my stuff goes on there. Stand ups from practice, all that stuff's there. And that's at Lake Lewis Jr. as well. So all social media is Lake Lewis Jr. or Lake Lewis Jr. At whatever that platform is. And then I have my my podcast. We've actually changed the name on it because I'm moving on to a network real soon that you'll hear about. And but it's the Lake Lewis Jr. Show. So you can check that out. It's on all platforms. You can watch it as well on YouTube. So then you can go to sportsjourney.com where I got, a bunch of new pups getting ready to take that to a whole nother level. I won't be visible with my own product anymore because of what I'm getting ready to do. But, I'll still be supporting it and helping these guys, run it and help make us some more money.
Right on, right on, man. Well, congratulations on the new show then.
I appreciate it.
All right, folks. All right, folks. Well, thanks you for tuning in. And until next time, peace out.
Peace out, knuckleheads.